My name is Ethan. I'm 30, and while I was under anesthesia getting rushed into emergency surgery alone, my family was posting champagne toasts and wedding hashtags from Napa Valley. My brother was getting married. My parents were smiling beneath a gold-lettered sign that read, "Family is everything." Not one of them called. Not one of them showed up. That was the moment I knew. I wasn't just forgotten. I was optional. So I did what they never saw coming. I built a $10 million company in silence, then crashed their perfect day with a $1 million truth they couldn't ignore. I woke up to the sterile scent of disinfectant and a dull, persistent ache in my lower abdomen. The fluorescent lights above buzzed faintly, casting a pale wash over the hospital room. I blinked slowly, trying to remember where I was and how I got there. Then it hit me. Surgery. Appendicitis. Emergency procedure. The pain had come on fast, a sharp stab that nearly dropped me in my kitchen less than 12 hours ago. 7 hours under, the nurse said. Complications. They almost had to call in a second surgeon. Instinctively, I reached for my phone on the side table. My throat was dry, but the silence in the room screamed louder than anything. No flowers, no cards, no one in the chair beside the bed. I powered on the screen, 6 missed calls from the hospital's automated system. None from my family. I opened Instagram out of habit. First thing on my feed was a live video tagged at Napa Valley. I froze. The stream was from Michael's account, my older brother, my golden boy brother. The screen filled with warm, filtered shots of white roses, crystal chandeliers, and a sprawling vineyard in the background. My mother was smiling. My father held a champagne glass. The caption read, "Walker Moore Wedding, a perfect day for a perfect couple." The video panned across the altar where Michael stood tall in a designer tux holding Rachel's hand. A soft string quartet played, and there it was right behind them in big looping gold letters. Family is everything. I felt something crack low and deep inside, not physical, something worse. I kept scrolling. Olivia, my cousin, had posted stories from the reception. Dad giving a toast, Mom dabbing her eyes, Michael grinning with his best man. My name wasn't mentioned, not even once, as if I didn't exist, as if I hadn't just come out of surgery alone in this sterile, lonely room wondering if I might not wake up. I set the phone down. The beep of the heart monitor beside me ticked louder. In all my 30 years, I never expected much from them. But this was a new low. Even if they didn't love me, didn't they at least feel obligated to show up, to call, to text? The nurse walked in cheerful and unaware. She asked how I was feeling. I mumbled that I was fine. She adjusted the IV and told me I'd be moved to a regular room in the evening. I nodded, then asked, almost afraid of the answer, "Has anyone called any family?" She checked the chart. "Nope," she said, "just the standard post-op notes." She smiled again as if it wasn't a big deal. I nodded again, trying not to let it show, trying to stay composed. After she left, I stared at the ceiling. The pain in my stomach was manageable. The pain in my chest wasn't. I remembered being 12 and breaking my arm falling off the monkey bars. Michael had his science fair that same day. They skipped the hospital to cheer him on. I remembered Mom saying, "Ethan, you're not made for the spotlight like your brother," and I believed her. For years, I believed all of it. That I was too quiet, too sensitive, too much of a burden. That my job in tech was just screens and keyboards, nothing that could ever make the family proud. Michael saved lives. I debugged code. It was no contest, but today was different. Today they made a choice, a clear, deliberate choice. I picked the phone back up one last time. I typed a message to my mom. "Hope the wedding is beautiful. Surgery went well, thanks for checking." I hovered over send. Then I deleted it. What was the point? I placed the phone face down on the table, pulled the blanket tighter, closed my eyes, and let the silence settle again. I wasn't angry. Not yet. I was tired. Tired in a way that felt old. Tired like a man who'd been carrying invisible weight his whole life, only now realizing he could just put it down. Outside the window, the sky was pale blue. Somewhere in Napa Valley, they were probably cutting the cake. I imagined Michael's voice in a toast. I imagined them laughing. I turned away from the window. Let them laugh. I lay there quietly waiting for the IV to beep again, pretending. When I was 6, I brought home a finger painting from kindergarten. It was messy, full of crooked lines and colors bleeding into each other, but I was proud of it. Mom barely looked at it before she said Michael painted within the lines by age 4. That was the first time I remember feeling small. Michael was always the benchmark, the honor student, the varsity athlete, the one who never forgot to say thank you to the neighbors. I was the quiet kid who read manuals for fun, who got anxious in crowds and liked computers more than people. My parents didn't know what to do with me, so they left me to figure myself out as long as I didn't make noise. One spring in 8th grade, I won first place at the California State Tech Expo. I built a prototype for a smart traffic light that adjusted in real time based on congestion. I remember standing on the small stage with my awkward haircut, clutching the cheap plastic trophy like it was made of gold. I called my mom right after. She answered distracted, told me they were at Michael's baseball championship party. Said they'd talk later. Later never came. They hung the team photo of Michael and his trophy in the living room for years. My plastic award stayed in a drawer until I threw it out during college. Dad used to say, "Let Michael lead the way. You'll find your own path eventually." But it never felt like guidance. It felt like a polite way of saying, "Stay out of the way." Over the years, I learned how to shrink myself. I didn't argue at dinner. I didn't ask them to attend my high school graduation when Michael's law school orientation was the same day. I stopped expecting them to notice. I just worked. I taught myself code, stayed up nights watching lectures online, built small projects nobody saw. It was the only space I felt capable. I remember overhearing my mom once on the phone with a friend. She said Michael will be the one to take care of us when we're older. Ethan, he's good with computers. She didn't mean it cruelly. That was the worst part. At 25, I landed a job at a mid-sized software firm in Santa Clara. It paid enough and I got to build things that worked. I called home to share the news. Mom congratulated me, then said Michael's getting promoted to senior counsel. Isn't that exciting? Even then, I kept trying. I visited on holidays, I brought wine. I laughed at their stories, I showed up. But slowly something inside me hardened, not into hate, into distance. That distance widened when I turned 29. I had been quietly working on a predictive analytics platform with real-time learning feedback. I pitched it to my manager. He liked it, said we'd build it together, share the credit. Weeks later, the company launched a beta under his name. I was left off the internal memo entirely. When I told my parents, Mom sighed and said, "Maybe that's just how the industry works. Try not to take it personally. Try not to take it personally." That had been the anthem of my life. So when I lay there in that hospital bed, staring at the ceiling, feeling utterly dispensable, it wasn't a new pain. It was an old wound reopened. They had been forgetting me my whole life. The surgery just made it official. I closed my eyes and let the IV drip steady. In that silence, I didn't cry. I didn't even feel sorry for myself. I just made a quiet vow, never again. I got the job at Orion Systems in 2021, just before my 30th birthday. It felt like a fresh start, a chance to work on something bigger than just back-end frameworks or maintenance patches. They were building an experimental AI engine designed to monitor and influence user behavior in real time. A behavioral loop predictor. I dove in head first. I was the first engineer on the team. I wrote most of the architecture from scratch, spent nights in the empty office when the rest of the staff had gone home. I believed in what we were making, even if I didn't always believe in myself. And for once, my direct manager, Connor Blake, seemed to believe in me. Connor was charismatic in the way tech execs sometimes are. Young, confident, endlessly polished. He knew how to talk up a room and how to take just enough credit to stay on top. But he also had a way of making you feel seen, in the beginning at least. When I demoed the first working prototype, he clapped me on the back like we were co-founders. He said, "This is your baby, Ethan. We'll get your name on the patent. You deserve it." I remember sitting in the parking garage afterwards, staring at the empty passenger seat, imagining telling my dad, telling my mom, telling Michael. But I didn't. Not yet. I wanted it to be real first. I wanted the paperwork, the email, the official line that said, "Inventor Ethan Walker." That line never came. A week later, I was called into HR. There had been budget cuts, department restructuring. My role was being dissolved. I sat there in a stiff chair as the woman across the desk read from a pre-written script. I wasn't angry. Not then. I was confused. I asked her what would happen to the project. She smiled like she didn't know, said she was just there to walk me through the exit package. The next day, Orion Systems filed a provisional patent for the behavioral loop predictor. Inventor Connor Blake. I didn't sleep for 3 nights. I called Connor. He didn't answer. I emailed the VP. No reply. I posted about it vaguely on LinkedIn. Nothing happened. Finally, I called home. I told my mom what had happened. I needed to hear someone say it was wrong, that I wasn't crazy. She said maybe that's just how the tech world works. Let it go, Ethan. It's not worth burning bridges. I felt the floor give out from under me. I called Michael. He said, "That sucks, man, but that's business. You should focus on moving forward." I moved forward. I signed the severance. I boxed up my desk. I drove home in silence. But something shifted after that. A seed planted itself inside me. Not of revenge, not yet. Of clarity. This world, my family, the people I'd trusted, they'd never really had my back. So I stopped waiting for them to. And for the first time in my life, I started thinking about what I'd build if no one was watching. The discovery came in the most mundane way, as these things often do. I was reviewing my annual credit report, something I never used to care about until the Orion fallout. It was part of my new routine. No more blind trust, no more assuming people had good intentions just because they shared my blood. The numbers looked fine at first. Then I saw it. A mortgage I didn't recognize, listed under my name. A sizable one from a regional bank in Sacramento. Fixed rate. Approved in 2022. I stared at the screen like it was in another language. I hadn't bought a house. I hadn't co-signed anything. I hadn't even been to Sacramento in years. I called the lender. After several transfers and holds, a voice on the other end said, "Yes, Mr. Walker, we have you listed as the primary on a loan taken out by Linda Walker. Co-signer status listed as familial. That's your mother, correct?" My mouth went dry. "Yes," I said. "That's my mother, but I never signed anything. She's listed as the secondary. It was processed electronically. Perhaps you signed digitally. I hadn't." I drove straight to my parents' house in Millbrae the next morning. The same beige two-story with the sagging porch swing and the overgrown rosebush that always pricked my ankles growing up. Mom was in the kitchen pouring coffee into a travel mug. She looked up like she hadn't seen me in months, which was mostly true. "Ethan, honey, you should have called. Is everything all right?" I held up my phone. "Have you taken out a mortgage in my name?" She didn't flinch. She didn't pretend to be confused. She just looked back down at her mug and stirred in 2 spoons of sugar. "I needed a loan to invest in a property with your uncle. It was time sensitive. Your credit is excellent. I didn't think you'd mind." "Didn't think I'd mind? Are you hearing yourself?" She sighed. "Ethan, it's family. You're not using your credit for anything major, right?" "That's not the point." She took a slow sip. "You always make things bigger than they are. You weren't raised to be selfish." Something in me snapped. "You didn't raise me at all. You managed me, like an afterthought, like a spare part." Her expression darkened. "That's not fair. We've done everything for you. Name one thing I said, just one." She opened her mouth, then closed it. The silence between us was thick. I could hear the refrigerator humming. "What did you even invest in a condo flip in Truckee? Your uncle found the listing. We'll pay it off quickly." "Using what, my name?" She waved me off. "Don't be dramatic. It's not like we're hurting your future." But they had. Not just with this, with everything. With the way they'd minimized me my whole life until they needed something. I walked out without another word. Later that week, I contacted a lawyer. The legal tangle was complicated. She had used a power of attorney form I'd signed years ago for a minor bank matter. It had never been revoked. Legally, she might be in the clear. Morally, she was a thief. I canceled the POA, froze my credit, swore off blind signatures forever. When I told Michael, he said, "She probably thought you'd say no, and she really needed it." He didn't see it. None of them did. To them, I was a fallback plan, a soft landing, a good credit score, and a steady income. Not a son. That night, I sat in my apartment and looked around. It was modest, neat. Everything paid for by me. No help, no handouts, just me. And it was the first time I realized I didn't want their approval anymore. I wanted distance. And I wanted control, not just over my finances, over my whole damn life, and I'd get it, quietly, meticulously, like code, line by line. Noah and I met in college. He was the loud one in our Intro to Algorithms class who wore comic book shirts under his blazer and wasn't afraid to challenge professors. We stayed in touch, occasionally sent each other links to papers or weird tech news. When I told him what happened with Orion, he said, "Screw them. Let's build our own." It started in my apartment, whiteboards in the living room, pizza boxes on the floor, a dozen half-coded frameworks abandoned at 2 a.m. Our idea was messy, at first vague. We wanted to build something that could adapt user experience based on subtle emotional feedback. The kind of intelligence that could learn how people felt without asking them. We called it Hexamind. We had no money, no investors, no credibility, but we had time and we had spite, which turned out to be enough. The break came when Claire Hayes entered the picture. She was a tech lawyer who had her own battle scars. She had worked for Connor Blake once, years before he stole from me. He had cut her out of a partner deal, used her work to win a settlement, and left her reputation in pieces. When she heard my story, she didn't hesitate. "You build it," she said. "I'll make sure no one can take it from you this time. Just give me 5% equity and we're even." She drew up airtight contracts. She sat with us during pitch meetings, sharp and composed like a blade in a suit. She didn't smile much, but when she did, it meant something. We pitched 3 times in 6 months. Each time the rejection stung a little less. Too ambitious, too early stage, too technical for consumer markets. One investor said, "This is interesting, but you're not founder material." I didn't argue. I wrote his name down. We kept going. The MVP took 11 months. A lean prototype that could process sentiment based on cursor movement and typing cadence. It wasn't flashy, but it worked. We submitted it to the Denver Innovation Circuit, half expecting to be ignored. We made the finals. The night before the last pitch, I almost bailed. The judges were senior partners, VCs, ex-founders with resumes longer than my career. I paced outside the venue until Claire came out, heels clicking like punctuation. "You built this," she said. "You don't hide from people like Connor anymore." I nodded, walked in, presented. One of the judges interrupted halfway through. "Your tech is solid, but your team looks green. What makes you think you can scale?" Before I could answer, Claire stood up. "Because I've seen people steal from this man, and I've seen him stand back up every time. If you're betting on resilience, bet on him. We won. It wasn't a check yet, but it was validation, the kind I'd never gotten from my family, the kind I didn't need from them anymore." After the ceremony, Noah raised a glass of cheap champagne. "To being the underdogs," he said. "No," I said. "To building something they can't ignore." It started as a dull ache in my right side. I brushed it off, blamed it on the bad takeout from the night before, but by morning I was curled up on the floor of my bathroom, drenched in sweat and shaking. I called 911 myself, too dizzy to think straight. The paramedics were quick. They asked if I had anyone to call. I said no. At the ER, the scans showed a ruptured appendix. They had to operate immediately. There was no time to wait for consent or family. As I lay in the sterile blur of pre-op, I thumbed through my phone with trembling hands. I texted Mom. No response. Called twice. Voicemail. I tried Michael. He picked up after the second ring, but his voice was rushed, background noise clinking. "Ethan. Can't talk long. What's up? I'm in the hospital. They're prepping for emergency surgery. Can you let Mom know?" There was a pause, just long enough to sting. "Damn. I'm at the rehearsal dinner. The wedding's tomorrow. Can you text her? I gotta run." The line went dead. They wheeled me in soon after. The pain was white hot by then, but the loneliness cut deeper. Surrounded by strangers in masks and gloves, I stared at the ceiling, heart pounding, and thought about how easily they'd moved on without me. When I woke up groggy and sore, I reached for my phone. Still no message from Mom. Nothing from Michael. But plenty from the internet. The wedding hashtag was trending among our extended family. Photos flooded my feed. Michael and his bride beneath a golden arch in Napa Valley. Long tables adorned with roses and string lights. Our parents laughing, champagne in hand. Then I saw it. A shot from the altar. Backdrop behind them read, "Family is everything." I laughed. Or maybe I choked. It came out broken. The nurse asked if I was in pain. I said no. I was done expecting anything from them. I clicked open the Notes app on my phone. Typed 2 words, full separation. No more birthdays, no more check-ins, no more pretending they cared. I signed the hospital discharge papers the next day, took a cab home. No balloons, no calls, just me and a bottle of antibiotics, and a resolve sharper than ever. They had cut me out so cleanly. Now it was my turn. I didn't post the hospital wristband selfie. I didn't tag the location. I didn't write a long caption about betrayal or family or grief. I didn't do anything except vanish. I deleted every personal post from my accounts, shut down Facebook entirely, changed my Instagram to private, removed all followers, and stopped posting. My number stayed the same, but I never answered unknown calls. I left every family group chat. When texts came from Mom or Michael, I archived them without reading. I became a ghost in plain sight. Noah and I moved Hexamine's base to Boulder, Colorado. Claire secured us office space through a tech incubator. We worked 12-hour days, sometimes more. I wrote code like it was the only language I trusted. Noah handled product strategy and outreach. Claire reviewed every contract, redlined every term sheet. 6 months in, we caught the attention of Angel Spark, a seed stage fund known for betting big on misfits. They invited us to pitch. It wasn't flashy. Just me, Noah, and Claire in a glass-walled room laying out numbers, showing traction, explaining our roadmap. The managing partner leaned back in his chair after we finished. "You built all this with no press, no noise. That's rare. Quiet confidence is underrated." We closed the deal 2 weeks later, $1 million in pre-seed funding, enough to expand Higher Breathe. The announcement went out in tech circles, but I asked the PR team to use our company name only. No headshots, no bios. Just Hexamind AI secures $1 million from Angel Spark to scale behavioral analytics platform. It worked. The media started calling me the ghost founder. Anonymous genius. Speculative threads popped up online trying to figure out who I was. Some said I was a pseudonym for a team of devs. Others guessed I'd been burned before. They weren't wrong. At night, I watched the coverage alone in my apartment. I never felt pride, just momentum. I ran into an old college friend at a tech mixer once. He looked surprised. "Ethan, dude, you're alive. No one's seen you in forever." "Still breathing," I said. "Just focused. You missed Michael's wedding, right? Did I?" He laughed awkwardly. "They say you're building something big, trying." What I didn't say was that I was building it not for legacy or fame, but for armor. Every line of code was a brick in the wall between me and the people who once claimed me. Mom tried calling twice after the funding news broke. I let it ring. Michael sent a voice note. I deleted it. Noah asked once if I ever missed them. Sometimes I said. But missing isn't the same as needing. A year passed like that. Silent, focused, controlled, and I didn't look back, not once. The morning sun was slicing through the blinds when the email landed in my inbox. I was midway through debugging a memory leak in our latest release. Claire had been pushing for a new build before the summer showcase, and we were running tight. I had barely slept. The subject line read simply, "You're invited." I clicked out of reflex, expecting spam or a startup networking event. What stared back at me was a sleek cream-colored digital invite stylized in cursive fonts with embossed gold accents in the corners. "You are cordially invited to the wedding of Michael Walker and Jenna Collins." No greeting. No "Dear Ethan." No sign it was meant specifically for me. I scrolled down, squinting, looking for my name. Nothing. Just a generic RSVP link. The sender address was a planning agency, and the recipient list, it wasn't blind copied. A string of visible emails, dozens of them. My jaw clenched. Claire walked in with 2 coffees, one look at my screen, and she froze mid-step. "Is that?" she asked. I nodded. Her tone changed. "Did they seriously mass email their family, apparently?" "Are you actually thinking of going?" I didn't answer right away. I just stared at the ornate digital invitation. That artificial warmth poured into a template, the final proof that I had been an afterthought. Again. The venue was listed as Meadowlark Estate in Sonoma. Fancy, expensive, the kind of place that made even resentment feel cinematic. I scanned the bottom of the invite. Sponsorship section, platinum patron Linda Walker. Of course, they were reaching out now for one reason: funding. Claire placed the coffee down slowly. "Don't do this to yourself. It's not about them," I said. "It's about what they represent." Later that night, when the house was quiet, I opened my work laptop and logged into Hexamind's charitable giving platform. We had set up a discretionary donation arm 6 months ago. It was meant for educational causes and ethical AI advocacy. I repurposed it just once. I sent a donation to Meadowlark Estates event sponsorship desk, enough to cover the top donor tier. But I added a note. Do not list Ethan Walker. The name for display should read Linda Walker. The event planner confirmed within the hour. Happy to honor your request. Your name will remain anonymous. I closed the laptop. Then I called a stylist in Boulder. I want something custom, sharp but understated. Vineyard wedding, California summer. They booked a fitting the next morning. I contacted a local luxury car service. One-way ride to Sonoma, full privacy. I wasn't doing this for attention. I wasn't going to stir the pot. I wasn't even angry anymore. But I was done pretending. I stood in front of the mirror in the tailor's studio the next day, watching the jacket hug my shoulders. The cufflinks glint subtly under the lights. The stylist, a petite woman with silver hair and quiet eyes, stepped back to admire. You want to make a statement, she said, not a scene. Exactly. The car ride was scheduled for the morning of the wedding. I told Noah I was taking a tech break for the weekend. Claire didn't need to know. She would try to stop me, reason with me. And this wasn't about reason. This was about showing up not as the Ethan they discarded, but as the one they failed to see coming. I packed light. One suit, one pair of shoes, no overnight bag, just a black envelope I had sealed the night before. Inside was a letter addressed to no one and to everyone. I had written it after midnight, the words pouring out like I had been holding them back for years. It wasn't bitter. It wasn't cruel. It was honest. And if the moment felt right, I'd leave it behind. Or maybe I wouldn't. Maybe just walking in would be enough. By the time the sun rose over the Rockies, I was already halfway to California, watching the miles blur past each one, erasing a little more of the boy they forgot, and building the man they never thought I'd become. The gates of Meadowlark Estate were already open when I arrived. A valet in white gloves opened my car door with a rehearsed smile. I stepped out slowly, adjusting my cufflinks as the morning sun caught the polished leather of my shoes. No one recognized me. That was the plan. The estate was a stunning spread of white stone buildings, rolling vineyards, and symmetrical floral arrangements. Guests moved like slow currents of color and laughter across the lawn, dressed in jewel tones and linen. A string quartet played something baroque under a canopy. Every detail screamed curated perfection. I moved through it quietly. A waiter offered champagne. I declined. My hands stayed in my pockets. I spotted Michael before he saw me. He was mid-conversation with a couple in designer suits, gesturing broadly, performing the role he had perfected since we were kids. Then his eyes met mine. The smile faltered, just for a beat. But it was enough. His new wife, Jenna, turned to follow his gaze. She squinted, puzzled. I nodded politely. The moment stretched. I walked on. Inside the reception hall, everything shimmered. Golden drapes, crystal chandeliers, floral centerpieces the size of small trees. I scanned the sponsor wall near the entrance. There it was. Platinum patron Linda Walker. I almost smiled. Guests filed into their seats, the ceremony starting soon. I stayed near the back, lingering in the shadows. Waited for the moment. The officiant stepped up, welcomed the guests. Michael and Jenna stood beneath a white arch wrapped in orchids. Their vows were rehearsed, polished. A photographer circled, capturing curated bliss. Applause, kisses, confetti. Transition to cocktail hour. I made my move. At the edge of the garden where the mic was set for toasts, a staff member was checking the list. I leaned in. Excuse me, I was asked to say a few words on behalf of a sponsor. Name Linda Walker. He nodded, stepped aside. I took the mic as the chatter settled. Most people didn't even look up. Good evening, I said. I'll be brief. Now they looked. My name is Ethan Walker. Some of you know me. Most of you don't. A few murmurs. Heads turned. Michael stood frozen at a nearby table. My mother dropped her fork. I've made a donation on behalf of Linda Walker, my mother, to the Redwood Initiative, a nonprofit working with underfunded schools in Northern California. $1 million to be exact. Applause. Cameras raised, phones out, gratitude faces all around, guests smiling politely at a philanthropic gesture they didn't understand. I wasn't finished. This contribution was made through Hexamind AI, a startup I co-founded last year. It's the result of 2 years of silent sacrifice and rebuilding. I'm proud of the work we're doing. A pause. I looked at my mother. She couldn't meet my gaze. I used to think family meant loyalty, support, showing up, laughter, discomfort, confusion. But sometimes family teaches you something else, like how to stand alone, how to build without applause, how to walk into a room you were never invited to and claim your place anyway. I held the silence. Then I smiled. Family is everything, right? I left the mic on the stand, walked off the platform, past stunned faces, past my mother still frozen, past Michael who opened his mouth but said nothing. I stepped back into the sun, the gravel crunching under my shoes, the music starting up again behind me like nothing had happened. But something had. Everything had. The calls started the next morning. My phone lit up before sunrise, the screen flashing Mom again and again. No voicemail, just that name pulsing in silence. I let it ring. The next day she tried from the house line, then her work phone, then blocked numbers, then texts. Ethan, please, you didn't have to do that. We need to talk. By Wednesday, she had started emailing, formal cold hiding behind grammar like a shield. I skimmed them all, didn't reply. What could I possibly say that wouldn't sound like salt? Then Michael emailed, the subject line. Hey. His message was brief, performative. Ethan. That was unexpected. If you need anything, let me know. If I need anything, I stared at the screen, wondering if he even realized what he was saying. Or maybe he did, and that was the most he could muster, still clinging to some distorted idea that I had made a scene, that this was about drama. Control, I closed the email. That night, after too much pacing and not enough sleep, I opened my laptop again. I typed slowly, deliberately. Subject: what I needed. Message: I didn't need anything at the wedding. I needed someone when I was in the hospital for 7 hours alone. I needed someone when I lost my job to intellectual theft. I needed someone when I found out Mom took out a mortgage in my name. I needed someone when you all laughed off my absence like it was convenient. But I don't need anything now. I just need you to remember that. I hovered over send. My thumb trembled, but I clicked it. The reply never came. A week passed. I buried myself in work. Noah didn't ask and I didn't offer. Claire gave me a look once, that raised eyebrow stare that said everything and asked nothing. You okay? She finally said one afternoon. I nodded. Yeah, better than okay. And I was. Not because it didn't hurt, but because I had finally stopped chasing ghosts. They didn't have to understand. They didn't even have to respond. The weight was off my chest. I had said what needed saying. I had closed the door myself, and this time I didn't leave it open behind me. The deal closed on a Thursday. Hexamind was officially valued at $10 million. The final number landed in my inbox with a simple subject line. Congratulations. I stared at the email, not smiling, not celebrating. Just breathing. Claire texted first. All caps. 10 exclamation marks. She knew what we built. She had carried the pitch deck's redlined contracts, dealt with sleazy investors, and chased late-night revisions. Her congratulations felt earned. Noah called. He always called instead of texting. We talked about the valuation for exactly 3 minutes. Then he asked what kind of coffee machine he should buy for our new Denver office. I told him to go with the Italian one. He laughed, said I was finally starting to sound expensive. That night I stood alone on the balcony of my rented apartment, the city glittering below. $10 million. Enough to rewrite everything. And yet it felt quieter than I expected. No balloons, no confetti, just silence. I didn't buy a penthouse, didn't throw a party. I didn't even post online. I found a small house in Evergreen, Colorado. Wooden floors, big windows, enough land to lose the noise. It was the kind of place people drove past and forgot. Perfect. Moving in took 2 days. I brought only books, a laptop, and a French press. I furnished it like I was building a personality from scratch. Vintage lamps, a record player, a chair so ugly it became charming. Everything chosen by feel. Neighbors waved politely. I waved back. Some asked what I did. I said I was in tech. They nodded. That was enough. I started a garden. Tomatoes, basil, a few stubborn strawberries. It gave me something to tend to, something to watch grow. I liked watching things become, not just exist. Most mornings I walked the ridge behind the house, a quiet loop that curved through pine and aspen. I learned to identify birds by their songs. I memorized where deer crossed at dawn. I saw a fox once. We stared at each other and neither of us moved. Hexamind ran fine without me for weeks at a time. Noah sent updates. Claire looped me in on legal decisions, but mostly I let go. The company had become its own thing. It no longer needed to prove anything. Every month I sent Claire and Noah a handwritten thank you card. I never said why. They never asked. Sometimes I included a pressed flower from the trail. Sometimes a joke. Once a doodle of us standing on a mountain made of contracts. Family didn't reach out. Not once. The silence wasn't surprising, but it wasn't painful either. Just space. Just the absence of noise. I heard from a mutual friend that Michael had bought a second house, that Mom had started volunteering at a local church, that Jenna opened a boutique baby store. None of it mattered to me. I didn't want apologies. I didn't need explanations. I wanted distance, not for revenge, for peace. And I had it. The last thing I packed before moving into the Evergreen house was a single photograph. Me, Noah, and Claire standing in front of a beat-up whiteboard filled with the first mock-up of Hexamind. We looked exhausted and free. I placed it on my desk, not as a trophy, as a reminder of what we built, of what I became, of who never needed to clap. There was no parade, no headline, just one man in a quiet house, finally living without noise. I never hated them. I just stopped inviting them into my life. That was the end and the beginning. Some days I would sit on the porch long after the sun dipped below the ridge, the world bathed in a slow golden hush. That kind of stillness makes you think about everything and nothing, about who you were before people told you who you had to be. I no longer measured myself in responses, replies, or recognition. I had shed those weights like old skins, leaving them behind in places I wouldn't revisit. There was no shrine, no final chapter neatly tied with redemptive bows, just space. Peace doesn't come with fireworks. It comes with knowing you don't need permission to move on. One evening I opened a blank document on my laptop and began to type. Not code, not a pitch, just words. My story, line by line like how I used to write logic trees. But this time the only logic I followed was mine. It wasn't for publishing. It wasn't for revenge. It was for remembering. Because memory, I've learned, is the only thing they can't edit. I wrote about the hospital bed, the unread messages, the birthdays missed, and the silences louder than any argument. I wrote about the boardrooms, the betrayal, the names on contracts that should have been mine. And then I wrote about Claire's voice, firm and steady, cutting through the noise. About Noah's terrible jokes. About the night we toasted with dollar store sparkling cider because that was all we could afford. I wrote about the little victories, the late nights, and the stubborn fire inside me that refused to dim. I wrote about the day the world learned my name and the day I stopped needing them to know it. And when I was done, I saved it, closed the laptop, and took a walk. Down the trail, up the ridge, through the trees that had never once asked me to be anyone else. The wind brushed through pine needles like a soft whisper. My boots hit the dirt in rhythm with my breath. I wasn't escaping anything anymore. I was walking towards something I built. Sometimes strangers ask if I ever talk to my family now. I tell them I don't. Not because I'm angry, but because the chapter closed and not every door has to be reopened. Michael is probably a father now. Linda probably brags about her volunteering. Jenna might tell people about her shop. They exist in their world and I in mine. But the difference is I chose mine. I remember asking myself once, how much silence does it take before love stops echoing? I know now the answer. It's not about how much. It's about how long you let yourself believe you deserve it. We tell ourselves stories, that they didn't mean it, that they were busy, that family is complicated, but sometimes the truth is simple. They just didn't show up. And you get to decide what to do with that. Not them, you. If you're listening to this and you've been waiting for someone to come back and say they're sorry, let me be honest with you. They might never do it. They might never see the wound. They might never admit the silence hurt more than words, and that's okay. Because you don't need an apology to heal. You don't need witnesses to become whole. You just need to stop asking for love from the same hands that dropped you. That's what I did. I didn't get even. I got free. And freedom. It's not loud. It's quiet. It looks like morning coffee in a chipped mug. Like jazz on a Sunday. Like knowing you don't owe anyone your softness ever again. So no, I didn't get revenge. I just stopped begging to be loved. And when I stopped, I got everything. Some nights I sit by the fireplace and reread the things I wrote. I don't edit, I don't revise, I just remember. The boy who stayed quiet, the man who chose to be loud in his own way, the in-between that shaped me. I don't wish them harm, I just wish myself peace. And peace I've found lives in knowing I no longer need their invitation to feel like I belong somewhere. If you've ever been the forgotten child, the overlooked sibling, the one who clapped for others while no one clapped for you, this story is yours too. Tell it. Because someone out there is still holding their breath, waiting to be seen. And maybe your voice is the one that lets them exhale. Thank you for being here. If this found you at the right time, stay. You belong here, always.